What happens when teddy bears get tired of being cute? You get Bearzerk, a survivor-like fever dream, where plush toys pack heat, ride chickens, and unleash bullet hell chaos across wave-based arenas soaked in pixelated blood and stuffing. At first glance, Bearzerk looks like your typical auto shooter. You pick a character, hop into an arena, survive waves, stack perks, and try not to die. But that's like saying a tornado is just a bit of wind. This game throws the rulebook out the window and replaces it with a goat, a duck in a hat, and maybe a flamethrower that shoots toast. This is a game that knows exactly what it is: loud, unhinged, and proudly stitched together with mayhem. Each run starts with choosing your teddy, but don't expect anything soft and cuddly here. You've got plush samurai bears, possessed bears, bears mounted on chickens. Some are fast, others tanky, and every single one comes with a unique loadout that shifts how you play and what kind of chaos you're about to unleash. It's not just pick your skin. These teddies change everything from movement style to synergy potential, and discovering how each one breaks the game is half the fun. Then there's the arsenal. We're talking over 20 weapons and more than 70 armor items, perks, and modifiers. All stackable, all chaos-inducing. You're not just tossing fireballs or shooting pistols. You're spinning like a cursed blender, branding enemies with irons, flinging molten toast, and dropping cursed snacks that fight on your behalf. Nothing's normal here, and that's the point. The buildcraft is where Bearzerk sinks its teeth in. Every item stacks, every perk matters, and some runs just snap into place, where suddenly you're exploding the screen with chain reactions, nuking the frame rate, and laughing as your teddy becomes an unstoppable storm of fluff and fire. It's the kind of game that wants you to break it. The synergy isn't subtle. It's loud, messy, and incredibly satisfying. And if all that wasn't enough, Bearzerk gives you pets, mounts, and ridiculous allies from the mount shop. 1 minute you're alone with your axe. Next thing you know, you're riding a sentient cheeseburger into battle with a goat at your side and Carlos the Duck screaming obscenities from your shoulder. Some companions bite, some bark. All of them help turn the tide when things go sideways, which they will. Now let's talk structure. Bearzerk runs on a 20-wave format. Each wave escalates in intensity, introducing new enemy types, stitched horrors, mini-bosses, and eventually massive big bears, with patterns, mechanics, and a complete lack of chill. The arenas are tight, filled with pixelated gore and incoming projectiles, forcing you to adapt your build or get shredded. But if 20 waves isn't enough, there's endless mode for the deranged, the brave, or the leaderboard chasers. No cap, no mercy, just you, your weird build, and an increasing flood of enemies until you physically can't keep up anymore. Perfect for testing busted loadouts or just proving a point. Between runs, you're not starting from zero. The Scroll of Stitches is your meta progression system, letting you unlock permanent upgrades and bonuses that buff your base stats, unlock new characters, or give you game-altering perks that shift how future runs play. It's the carrot on the stick that keeps the chaos meaningful and makes each failed run feel like progress. And this is still just early access. The devs are in full gremlin mode, adding new teddies, weapons, maps, bosses, mounts, events, and yes, even more sentient snacks. The roadmap is full-blown feature creep, and they seem totally okay with that. So what is Bearzerk really? It's a Survivorlike that doesn't take itself seriously, and that's exactly why it works. It's fast, it's weird, it doesn't care about balance or elegance. It cares about giving you that moment where your build just clicks and the screen erupts in fireworks made of fur and fire. It's the kind of game where your only real goal is to cause as much beautiful, fluffy destruction as possible before it all falls apart. And if you're the kind of player who enjoys stacking perks until the game starts breaking, experimenting with cursed synergies, or just wants to ride a chicken into war with a goat as backup, this one deserves your attention. Bearzerk is nonsense, but it's the best kind of nonsense. It's evolving fast, it rewards creativity, and above all else, it respects your time with a gameplay loop that knows exactly when to get out of the way and let the madness take over. So yeah, pick your bear, gear up, let the fluff fly,